So the Texicurians today are here with a wonderful star of a guest. I'm here with Jo Ann Andera, and Jo Ann is heavily involved in the Lebanese Society and in her church, which is
St. George Maronite Catholic Church.
And tell me about that. That is something that your family has a big part in, and also the formation of it.
When the early immigrants came from Lebanon in the early 1900s, their faith was really one of the important parts of their lives. And so they, as soon as they could, they built churches and they brought a priest over to practice their religion. And my father happened to be one of the early immigrants, and he helped found St. George in 1925.
1925.
And then in the 40s, he went back to Lebanon and married my mother, who was 40 years younger than he was.
Oh my goodness.
But that was much
guy.
the way that people did that at that time.
Oh, interesting.
And so she came to the United States, and we tell a really funny story because in Lebanon they do the pita bread, and my father took her to the store to go shopping, and she said, "Where's the bread?" And he gives her a loaf of probably butter crust, and she mushes, and she goes, "This isn't bread." So she got flour and yeast, came home, and started baking her own pita bread at home because that's what she was used to. And when she came, she didn't speak English, she didn't drive a car, but again, her faith was really a big part of her life. And so she got very involved with the church. And at the time, you know, all churches do is raise funds and have meals and lunches and dinners to try to make money to keep their churches going. And so the ladies would get together and do Lebanese meals. And then as we progressed, she really was one of the amazing chefs that we had at our church. And she was an intuitive cook, drove everybody crazy because she never followed a recipe. She would just, and I said it's in her hands. She could cook for 500 people and it tasted like she had just made dinner for 1 or 2 people. It was a gift. And so my sister and I, in her later years, would drive her to all the prepping and all the fundraisers. And so we really got to see how important it was for her and for the community, getting together, talking, sharing. And she cooked for us at home. I never cooked because I would come home from work and we had a feast laid out. And as she got older and was very arthritic, I started doing the cooking. But I also didn't follow a recipe. And
so this might be a little challenging today.
No, actually, it always comes out. It's just that when you know what the ingredients are supposed to be and what it's supposed to taste like, I think that's the key. Is a lot of people follow things, but they don't really know the final taste. What is it really supposed to taste like? One of the best examples is hummus, because there's a million varieties. Boy, if we had gotten in on that action early on, we'd be millionaires. But it's different, and different people make it differently. Some add more garlic, some add more tahini, so it's really a matter of practice. And when you do it over and over again, you get much better at it. So basically, that's the way that I really learned how to cook and really grew to just love the culture, the foods, the history of the foods. It's kind of neat.
Awesome. So from what I'm hearing is you start cooking with the end in mind. You know what it's supposed to taste like, and that's what drives you as you're going along.
Exactly.
So tell us what we're making today.
Well, today we are going to make wada arish, which is a grape leaf, and everybody calls them dolmas, but the dolmas are Greek. These are a little bit different, and we're gonna make grape leaves.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay, where do I
All
start?
right.
I have never done this before, so I have been so excited just thinking about doing this.
Well, in your history with Lebanese families, I think that's really...
It is.
Once you become a part of the family, that's it.
It is.
It's for life.
I should share that with everyone. So my mother's, one of her best friends from nursing school in Seton and Austin was Dorothy Hashem, and I grew up hearing about what a fabulous cook Dorothy Hashem's mother was, because she would invite my mother over while she was in school and at the university for dinner, and she said she would walk into the house and it would just smell so fabulous. So the one thing that my mother really probably only fine-tuned was tabbouleh, and we had tabbouleh 2 or 3 times in the summer. It was just kind of a staple at our house. And I would tell my friends we're having tabbouleh, and they'd be, what? So I felt fortunate that I did have that brush with the Lebanese culture and was able to
And I think tabbouleh is kind of interesting because when the Lebanese started at Folklife, they did the shish kebab and tabbouleh. And people would go, what is that? And they finally changed it to a health salad. And so
then they were okay with it.
They put it on the map in San Antonio because they were participants 50 years ago when tabbouleh was not part of everyday life and part of the Mediterranean cuisine. So,
okay, what can I do to help?
Well, I want you to stand there and give me moral support.
Okay, I can do that.
Well, a lot of the people have grapevines in their backyard, and they go out and they pick leaves. Now, these are way too old and it's past their season, but usually they pick them. They either pickle them or they freeze them. And when they're ready to do their cooking, they take them out and they use them. The alternative is the pickled or brined grape leaves. Everybody has their personal favorite. A lot of the ladies really love Orlando, and they love them because of the size of the leaf. And when you can't get grape leaves because they're out of season, you can just go buy a jar at a Middle Eastern store or on Amazon. Okay, so what we've done is I've open the jar, and they all still have their little stems, so I spent all morning cutting stems off of all of the grape leaves and getting them ready. A lot of the Lebanese actually use lamb, but in the United States we use ground beef usually. Some people still use lamb, but a lot of the times beef is just easier to come by, and it's it's a matter of preference also. So you put your ground meat and then you add your rice, and I'm not going to put as much because I measured more just in case. Now, some people do not use crushed tomatoes. I do because it makes them moist and it gives them a nice flavor. Put that there.
Your personal favorite.
The secret ingredient is a little bit of butter, and we're going to put that right there. Okay, and then what we're going to do is get our salt shaker. Now this is where it's fun because this is the way we cook. And a little bit of pepper. And when we're cooking at the church, I use gloves. At home, I never do. So now we're going to mush it really good, mix it to where it makes a nice filling for the grape leaves.
So this is something that you would have a lot of times at a church gathering then?
Yes. In fact, we just did a drive-by festival and we made 5,000 grape leaves.
5,000.
We have an army of women that get together, and men. Now, sorry. Time out.
Okay. You can click it off. Okay. So as long as she's talking, just have it on her and not on me at all.
Okay.
Let me just
basically the whole time.
hold on.
It is.
Yeah.
You can't just kind of like put it over there just on her.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Because he can edit that out if you can't do that.
I also need to.
So if I just got her.
Well, my hands are dirty, so I can't turn it
It
off.
was, so this is better. Gotcha. Okay. I see what you're saying. Okay.
So we're having a festival in October, and as a matter of fact, we're going to start rolling grape leaves, and it's kind of fun because we use the jars at home. They buy the 25-pound buckets, and it is a never-ending stream
of grape leaves.
Of grape leaves, and you kind of try not to think about it or look at it, because then you sit there and you think, oh God. Okay, so now this is what it looks like, and you can see I don't like to put in as much of rice because they also blow up sometimes when you put too much rice. So use a pound of meat to about a cup of rice.
Okay. Well,
Okay,
that's
so
an
now
easy
we're going to
ratio.
wipe our hands, and we're going to get our pot ready.
Okay.
And what we do is put tomatoes at the bottom so that it doesn't burn. Now, a lot of the Lebanese
Interesting.
also use lamb bones, lamb
Okay.
chops or lamb shoulder, and they put the lamb
Line it
on
on
the
the
bottom,
bottom.
and it gives it that really special flavor.
Oh.
So now we are going to put, I don't do them one at a time because I'm a type A personality, and I usually do 6 or 8 on the kitchen counter. But for our purposes and for time, I am going to just do this. Now, I estimated a tablespoon, but I usually just look at it, eyeball it. And depending on the size of the leaf, actually, is how much you put in.
I know there is a variance of the
It
leaf
is. The
sizes,
leaves-
and that's typical. That's just what you're going to get
Exactly,
when you
and
open
so
a
you
jar.
have to be a little bit more. Now, the people that do this commercially, what we do next is we flip this part over, we bring it this way, we bring it this way, and we do this.
Oh,
And there you are.
that was so smooth.
And then we do another one here, and I tuck in a little, sometimes
Tuck in the
it's kind of
sides.
hard to do that. And then you just keep doing this, and you think it's never going to end.
So how long would you typically spend gathered together to make that many?
We start in the morning, and we're usually done by 1 or 2 in the afternoon. It just depends on how many people show up. And it's really kind of fun because people will sit there and say, well, she's making them too fat. Or
You get some opinions in the
a
room.
lot of it. And so what we've really tried to do, the older generation were a little bit hard on the younger women, and the younger women opted not to go learn because they were intimidated by the ladies, and they didn't have a lot of patience. The other thing is you put it where you have the shiny side down and the rougher side on the inside.
Okay, so does
And
that
then-
mean the stem side is down?
Uh,
If there were still a stem on there, is
I guess I never thought of it that way, because you can tell this is the smooth side and this is the
Oh,
rough
definitely,
side. So you
yeah.
can tell
kind of
just
the
by looking at
underside,
that.
yeah.
Okay, so now we're gonna do, this is a little one, and this one is a medium one. Okay, and we're gonna do this. Okay. It's very therapeutic. You know, they say cooking is a very relaxing thing to do, and that is very, very true.
I
'Cause
totally agree.
you're focused on what you're doing, and you're not thinking about anything but how you're going to roll your little wonderful grape leaves.
So I'm wondering about the conversation while you're doing this. Are you sharing traditions? Are you just talking about
we're talking
what's going
about
on?
world affairs. We talk about people's kids. We talk about who's been on a trip. Right now, one of the subject of conversation really has been the crisis in Lebanon. Ever since the explosion a year ago, the government has imploded. We are all adopting families, and a lot of the Lebanese that live outside of the country are really sending money. They have no medicine. They are running out of food. They don't have fuel. And it's really rather sad what's going on there. Okay, so now we've rolled all of these, and what we're going to do is we're going to start potting them.
potting them. So
Putting
that's the
them in the pot.
terminology.
Okay.
Okay.
And you just take them and you start putting them in. And you try to put them closer together so that they are tight. Now, one of the things about my being Lebanese and growing up as I did, I really had an affinity for cultural groups and people's histories. Just like you want to hear their stories about how they cook, I want to know, what drove them? Where did they come? Why did they come? And then, when you hear their stories of the trials and tribulations that these people endured to come to America for a better life, it really kind of touches your heart. And we have people coming from all over the world to seek the dream. Now, I've sort of put them in this way. So then you go and reverse so that it's opposite.
Oh,
And
okay. It's kind of a crisscross pattern. Yeah.
Exactly. And it really makes them cook easier.
So on that subject, do you know what drove your father to come to Texas in particular? He could have gone to any state in the United States, but
The way
do you know what
the
that...
Lebanese immigrated was one brave soul came, and then they wrote back, and they, you hear this, that the streets in America are paved in gold. And having been to Lebanon and reading the history, the Ottoman Empire, they were conscripting young men, and it was a very difficult time. And so when they came to America, we have no idea the difference. As difficult the life as it is, it was opportunity for them, and they were hardworking, they were entrepreneurial. And in my father's case, he had a produce wagon.
Oh.
And then he bought a piece of property, and then he bought another piece of property, and then he bought another piece of property. And you see that among the early immigrants that came. They really felt that hard work would be the way to do this. And then their family was first. A lot of them sent back for their spouse or sent for someone to come that they knew from the village that they could marry. So what they did is, you see a lot of places in the United States where everybody is from one village. Because you came to San Antonio and you wrote to cousin Abdullah, and then you wrote to the other cousin. And before you knew it, they would come, and they already had somebody here that spoke their language that could help them. And so that's exactly the way that they immigrated. Now, the second generation, the ones that came worked so hard. They wanted their children to have better education. So you see among the second generation a lot of lawyers and a lot of doctors. And it was their parents putting aside and depriving themselves so that they could better their children. And so basically, okay, now we have our pot.
Okay.
And these are hard to find. I collect things when I see them, but
I've never seen one of these.
You need to weight down the grape leaves.
Okay.
You can use a clay plate or a plate that's
would work
heavy.
as well. Okay.
All right. It's got to have
That's what I was going to
weight.
ask you. Yeah. What is an
Now,
alternative if you can't
in this
find this
case,
unique?
well, we used to put plates, and then we'd put bottles of water, which isn't smart. Anything to weight it down. And so you do that.
Okay.
And then what we're going to do is...
Does this thing have a name?
It does, and I can't remember what it is.
That's okay.
So I'll be 2 seconds. I'm coming
right.
back. Okay. We're going to mix. You can do this one of two ways. I put the lemon juice at the beginning. Okay. A lot of them will just they'll use broth of some kind as a flavoring. You can use just plain water, and then halfway through, after like 15 minutes, they'll add the lemon. I put it in at the very beginning myself.
Add a little more salt.
Yeah, a little more. And I'm going to use my little spoon here and you make sure that usually the salt ends up at the bottom of the jar anyway.
So would this be 1 lemon that was squeezed?
It's a 1/4 of a cup.
Okay.
And you have to
Very
taste
good.
it to where it's lemony.
Okay.
All right, and then you just pour it over.
Pass the taste test.
And you have to come up to where it comes over it. See if I do this right.
So it actually goes
It has
over
to
this
cover. It has to
piece.
cover them.
Okay.
Yeah. Just about like that.
Okay.
Okay. And then you put it on the stove and you cook. You let it start to boil, and then you lower it and you cook them for about 30-35 minutes. Sometimes if the leaves are very tough, which sometimes happens, you have to cook them a little bit longer. And sometimes they're stringy. But
how do you know that? Is there a way that you can tell? Do you just
the
taste test?
The taste
is it any better than that?
Take I take this off, and I always have to have 1, 2, or 3. And this is what they look like when it's finished.
Result.
There it is.
Beautiful.
So now you need to taste it. Pick whichever one you like. We
Okay.
need to have a taste.
Here
Okay.
I go.
I'm going to have one of
Take
these.
One of this.
Mm.
Woo!
Sahtain,
Oh,
which is your
Sahtain.
health twice in Arabic.
Oh.
Sahtain. Saha
Sahah
nine.
nine.
Sahtain.
Sahah nine.
And
Yeah.
you say albik, which is on your heart. It's just a saying.
I love it. Now it's time to eat. That's amazing. I would say this is almost like comfort food.
I'll tell you that.
Oh,
People start eating them.
so good. Yeah, how
And
many?
they don't stop.
How many can you eat of these?
As many,
As many as you
just
want.
keep eating.
Oh,
So there
that
is
is amazing.
our tribute to Lebanon with grape.
Amazing. I love your presentation. Thank you so much, Jo Ann. I really appreciate it. And I have a little something for you. Let me see if I can. Just gonna set this down. Is that okay right here? So thank you so much for sharing. And I
wow.
know you said you're not a big apron person,
But I do.
if
when I
the
cook at the
occasion-
church,
there you go. Tell
I do
them you're
wear
a
them.
Texicurian now. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Oh,
This
so
is
awesome.
It's an honor and a privilege to be able to share our culture. And cooking brings people together through
It does.
It brings people, the family Sunday lunches are still being done in our culture. And it just, people love to eat. And with the pandemic, it's really been so many young people call and go, can you tell me how to do this? Can you tell me how to do that?
Been a
They're
good
all
time
starting to
to
learn
learn.
and pass it from one generation to the next.
And that's what I love about food, is it is something that you can say, oh, my grandmother made this, and you have memories of your grandmother and family gatherings. So for you,
My
and
hands
it's
are-
okay, we'll just put it right
That's
down
great.
here. And
Thank you so much.
Yay. Okay, that's it. So one other little thing that I'd like to do is if there's a chair that you'd like to sit in, or your couch or